Hello, everybody, and welcome as we're joining you live from Dallas, Texas, again from my home office. We're live on all of our platforms for NVTV. That's YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, as we've got a great show lined up for you all today. The CDL has officially returned. Was there enough added to the online league in order for it to succeed for the long haul? We'll also be talking on my top 5 players to watch heading in to the online league, who deserves a spotlight and why. Along with that, we'll also be joined later by Minnesota Rockers' own GODRX. All that and more ahead on Off the Break. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Off the Break, presented by Jack the Box. I'm LandO Sanders. Like I said, sadly, we are not in the beautiful Frontier Communications studio. I wish we were very much, but still happy to be able to provide as much content as we can. I know I've seen a few people talking on Twitter about, oh, there's not a whole lot of stuff to talk about in regards to the CDL. It's been kind of a slow time period. What? We had a lot of stuff to talk about. There's a lot of things to cover coming into an online league, a franchised esports league. Obviously, multiple esports are being affected by this, but we're talking strictly about Call of Duty here. A franchise league is going from a land-based system to online. There's a lot of stuff to cover. There's a lot of things to unpack, and thankfully, we've been able to do that over the last few weeks. And thankfully, we were given an update not too long ago in regards to what the future of the CDL is going to be, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Before we do that, I want to give a quick shout out to everybody who may be listening to this, whether you're live with us right now or if you're joining us a little bit later on. We want to give a massive thank you to the folks that are listening to us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, etc. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to check out Off the Break on all podcast platforms in case you do manage to miss an episode. Again, we talked about it, CDL Online. We finally have been given news. It feels good. It's nice to actually have somewhat of an update when it comes down to the future of the CDL. In case you missed it, which I'd be shocked if you did, the Call of Duty League is officially back as it makes its return this weekend. Again, that is this weekend, not the following, but no, just a few days away. This Friday is when the CDL is firing back up. And I did tell you, by the way, for those who may have watched last episode. In case you didn't, if you did, you got a little bit of a sneak peek because I mentioned last week. Watch out for this upcoming week, right? I kept saying, be aware. Within a week's time, we should be hearing something. I said I'd be shocked if we come back on Tuesday and didn't hear anything. And now we're here on Tuesday and we have officially heard something. I also mentioned in that specific video that I wouldn't, or that I mentioned in that particular podcast, or in that specific video rather, that we would in fact be probably hearing in regards to the CDL, the league kicking back up within 2 weeks from the announcement. Just so happens to be a few days, rather 1 week. So pretty accurate on that. I'll take that as a little bit of a W. But the Dallas homestand, the Dallas online homestand, will be taking place on April 10th through the 12th, and will feature Chicago, Minnesota, Paris, Seattle, Toronto, LAG, Florida, and of course Dallas. But the big question that I've been hearing in terms of speculation around the CDL starting back up, and based on what we've gotten from the mailbag, et cetera, is will the online league thrive now being online? And first, before I even address that, let's go over a few takeaways. Let's go over a few key takeaways from the announcement, some bullet points, if you will, because the format, for those that did not read the announcement or haven't really seen a whole lot, the format will remain the same way that it existed on LAN, right? GSO group stage format, single elimination bracket. Nothing really changes other than the fact that we're now online. And let me tell you how much of a relief that is, because it seems so simple, right? It seems so basic. Okay, we're going from a LAN environment to an online environment, but there are so many little things that could have gone wrong, right? There are so many little things that could have gone for the worse, right? Online league matches, it would not have been great. It would get boring considering the fact that we're going away from such a great system. And so I'm personally not just happy, but relieved at the fact that we now do not have to worry about the online league format not being a great system because we've already seen it on LAN. Granted, it's not going to be as great as LAN, but at the very least, I'm excited to see the fact that the system is still remaining the same because I would be worried about an online league match format, especially considering what we have previously had. So I think, at least for me, I'm pretty happy when it comes down to that particular point of view. I'm pretty thrilled at the fact that nothing is dramatically changing by any means. And I am happy to say that the CDL continued to push this tournament format system, and that they also did make a few adjustments as well. And we talked about this last week. Precautions need to be taken into consideration for the league. And the timing of it all told me that that's what they were doing. Right? Last week we discussed this. The wait, as I thought it would be, was well worth it, right? The whole world realizes regular sports, esports, TV, they all realize now is the time to pump out content. There is a reason why the NBA, the NFL draft, little things like this, everybody wants to come back. And obviously they're being, cautious when it comes down to COVID-19, but everybody wants to come back right now. Right now is the time. Since everybody is at home, the esports audience and the general audience, now is the time to give them content. And the weight that the CDL had told me there has to be a reason for why they are not wanting to tap into that just yet. Or not that they don't want to, but the reason why they have not as of a few weeks ago. The Call of Duty League, in my eyes, realizes time is money. Right? Time is money. They realized we needed the CDL to return, but at the same time, they needed it to be available as quick as possible because of the return that could exist with it. So, by the CDL's timing, it told me they're waiting on something, right? Something is holding this league from starting back up again. And clearly, like I mentioned, it was worth the wait for the announcement that we got. Like I said, everybody wants to come back. I think that every single esports league, every single sports league, anything that was canceled, knowing that the audience that exists now, they want to come back. And that's the ultimate thing. There have never been more eyes readily available for content to reach now, right? We're seeing even a few sports documentaries that have been kind of highlighted, which I won't go into, but there's been a lot of little releases, some video content pieces that sports have been kind of waiting on and said, you know what? Now's the time, right? Now's the time that we need to dive in because here is the opportunity for us to really maximize on viewership. That's the same reason why I talked about last week, and I'll mention it again here. Twitch numbers never been higher. TV numbers over the last few years have never been higher than they are right now. The CDL's wait told me there is a reason why they haven't decided to start as of yet. And I think waiting solely on dedicated servers was enough for me, right? That was strictly right there. I'm good. Makes sense. I get it now. This is something that we all know should have been in the game for years, but I'm just happy that the pros have access to it now, right? We'll save the complaining on that for another time. I am just strictly happy that we have dedicated servers now coming in to the CDL. And while the CDL didn't make any groundbreaking announcements, because they really didn't, right? They did kind of what we expected them to do. They checked off pretty much almost all of the check marks that I had, which I'll take. Being realistic, I'll take it. I'm not trying to, have all my expectations just totally thrown out of the water. I'm just excited that we got all the information that we realistically were looking for. Now, the only thing that I think maybe could have been tweaked, and I'm not angry about this, but the only thing that I think could have been adjusted was the usage of all 12 teams. Now, I want to be clear. I get the idea for why 12 teams are not being utilized. I understand the reasoning for why they're deciding to stay with what has been consistent up to this point, right? Because why not keep everything uniform, right? I mean, why enable all 12 teams to play in an operation that's much bigger and for an online league where things probably need to get toned down? That was very apparent when it came down to the CDL announcement. They're very apparent to say, hey, it's not going to be the same thing. We're going to do our best to try to make it the best it can possibly be, but we're not going to have the same observers. We're not going to have that same environment where we have as many production people kind of flowing in at all times. It's not going to be like that. but we're going to do our best to try to maximize as much as we can. So you don't have as many hands, you don't have as many bodies, if you will, to put into what is a live operation for the CDL. So I understand the idea of not including all 12 teams, and I realize that it wouldn't be easy whatsoever. But all league teams next year need to be included if we're going to do the tournament format. I love it. I love the format that we're doing, but it's just still missing something. It is. It's like, whenever you have something that's so delicious, but it just needs that extra kick. That's exactly what the CDL needs, I think, when it comes down to the tournament format. It's given us so much, and it's been fantastic. And I think it's going to be a great system when it comes to online. But realistically, I just think it's missing one small thing. And I think in terms of the word small, it's not exactly small because you're adding, in this case, four extra teams. But still nonetheless, I think it's still just missing one little thing. And I wish that we could have all 12 teams. Understandably, why it is not like that. But let's kind of transition here because it's not all perfect, right? But in terms of what we've got, realistically, how well does the Call of Duty League do popularity wise? Because that's really the question that we're asking here, right? It's nice that we can kind of go over the format. It's nice that we can talk about, oh, yes, this is what the CDL is going to do. This is the tournament format. This is how all the leagues are, rather, this is how the teams are going to be structured. These are when the teams are going to face off against each. Stop, right? Does the viewership go up realistically, right? I mean, is this a good thing that in certain situations, that there are now more eyes on the CDL? And keep in mind, when I say a good thing, I'm talking about, can a good thing come out of a very, very, very negative situation? Does the viewership go up? Are more people talking about the CDL than ever before because of everyone now being at home? Everyone now being at home because of what has been a horrible, horrible outbreak in COVID-19. Based on all the numbers right now, that we have seen, done some research into esports charts, done some research into really just Twitch numbers. And for the average Joe, they'd probably realize Twitch viewership's doing pretty well. I think it's fair to say streaming numbers themselves are doing pretty well. We talked about it. There is a reason why everybody wants to come back right now. Sports, esports, even sports are looking at esports saying, hey, we need you guys to kind of help us out here because we don't have a whole lot of competition going on. So we need somebody to help us out. We need some form of content to fill the gaps to help us because of the amount of eyes that are on TV screens, that are on monitors, that are on just any device right now. Any metric, any stat will show you viewership realistically should at least stay consistent, right? There is something to add on to that. Now, normally, if LAN was still a possibility, right? If COVID-19 never takes place, just in general, viewership would be less, right? If we were transitioning from a LAN to online league, just because, right, in-person events are always going to do better. The same applies really to just anything, but specifically Call of Duty, that is just historically what takes place. Formats, especially when it comes down to league tournaments, etc., they do way better when it comes down to LAN. Just the atmosphere feels so much different. Now, what I'm looking at isn't when it comes down to this online league, the numbers, the stats, whatever it may be. I'm not looking at the day one numbers to know whether or not we are going to see an influx. It's not the massive amount of viewers that we're going to have, like I said, on day one, because I'm assuming the numbers on day one are going to be great. I'm not looking at the numbers that are going to take place when Chicago faces off against a great team in the early stages, right? The Chicago versus Dallas, the Chicago hopefully versus Atlanta that we're all waiting for. Throw in any number, any type of team that you really want to. I am looking at the consistency of those numbers rather across multiple weekends to know whether or not this was truly a major positive that is coming out again of a negative situation, whether or not the viewership actually could go up because of the fact that everybody is at home, because of everybody being and watching Twitch, watching live streams, watching content. The big thing for me, though, is that you have to consider there's a lot of other outside things they're going to try and take those viewers away, right? That's what I'm looking at. It's the environment, I believe, that the CDL is going to need to put in place for this to actually, in some ways, help the CDL. Because how will this, let's kind of put this in perspective a little bit. How will the Call of Duty League make this online league feel special, right? Feel unique. Feel like these matches really matter. And I feel like the first stage was to copy the format, right? That makes it feel more prestigious. I would have loved it. And I mentioned earlier, I totally understand this. It would have been amazing if we could have thrown in the 12 teams, because then there's actually a little bit of an upgrade when it comes down to the format. If you add double elimination, there's a little bit of an upgrade that you get when it comes down from a LAN to now online league format. So at the very least, I'm cool with the copy and paste that we see here. But it is going to be very important, like I mentioned, the atmospheric capabilities, what it feels like to be watching a LAN tournament. There is a difference when you go from LAN to online, and viewers know this, right? It feels different. It doesn't feel as prestigious. And that is what I think is going to be a huge deal when it comes down to the CDL, is how do you make this feel important? How do you make it feel just as, or at the least, just under what LAN provided us with? From viewers to talent to players, management, etc. Everyone is aware that the level of competition isn't as good as we've previously had. As much as we want to talk about how dedicated servers are going to be the best thing possible, it is still a replacement for what is at the moment perfect in LAN. You're not going to get that, right? You're not going to get that perfect feeling, even if we were at a whatever. I don't even know the official tick rate to think it's 60 hertz. Even if we were at the highest rate possible, it still will not be where LAN is. So it is then, in my eyes, up to the Call of Duty League to make these matches feel impactful, to make these series, to progress these storylines to an online environment. I love the idea. And if for those who didn't get a chance to kind of read on a little bit in the statement that the Call of Duty League did announce, I love the idea that they're sending cameras, right? They're sending players cameras so that they can record their perspectives. And I'm saying cameras in terms of, like, for those that are familiar with kind of more production talk, lipstick cameras, for example, almost like webcams, but higher production quality. I love the idea of doing that. Granted, is every player going to be able to do it? Who knows? I think it's an excellent idea in theory, because seeing players giving little kind of notices to people watching at home is going to help a lot with audience retention. And that's the number one thing that I think the CDL needs to focus on. And I think it's the number one thing that they are going to try and focus on. But it's like I said, it's a lot easier said than done when it comes down to trying to maximize what is a lot of eyes, also with a lot of competition. There's a lot of games coming out. There's a lot of movies coming out. There's a lot of different things that are trying to take the attention of the amount of people that now are more open to receiving content. But I think, I know the world is still learning more about COVID-19 and the future impact of it. It can be kind of hard to judge how long the quarantining and stuff like that will last. But if everyone stayed somewhat similar or the same, I think the CDL will start to see at moments sizable viewership increases, or at the very least, kind of similar numbers to what we experienced in the LAN League, especially off the start. But I think that can and probably will start to drop off progressively unless the Call of Duty League can really make the online environment consistently exciting. That's the biggest thing for me. I think the ball is in the CDL's court, and they have to be kind of aware of the situation that they're in. And like I said, making this environment, this online league, feel just as impactful as LAN probably isn't possible, but at the same time, it's going to be interesting to see exactly how they implement that, how they make it feel important. It's going to be fun to watch, and I'm excited to see exactly how they plan on doing that. Now, on track with the online league, it is time to hop in for my top 5 players to watch heading into the online league. Now, I actually managed to, I actually tweeted this out a little bit earlier, asking a few people for their opinions on different things. And I love at the very end of the segment as well, if you guys have any thoughts, if you have any opinions when it comes down to the online league, feel free to let me know that. And feel free at the same time, let me know your top 5 players heading into the online league to watch. And I want to kind of clarify what the to watch means. It's not as if, hey, who are the top 5 best players they're going to be there online. It's not really exactly what I'm kind of aiming for. What I'm personally aiming for is who are the most impactful people, right? Who are the people that it's like, hey, I got to watch out for this guy because this is defining the team. This is pretty much changing the CDL based on how this particular player performs. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts when it comes down to that. Feel free to put it in the chat. If you're watching us, later on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., you can feel free to tweet at me at LandO. Feel free. Let me know your thoughts. Had a lot of people talking on Twitter about who their top 5 players to watch coming into the online league are. Let's go and start off with my list. Number 5. We're starting off in New York with someone that I'm actually very, very interested to see when it comes down to the online league. And that is the newest addition to the subliners, Mac Melts. Let's get right into it, right? The hype around this guy is something to take note of, right? When I interviewed Attach not long ago, he said, no question, Mac is starting for us. I asked him kind of what was your biggest kind of positive, if you will, about this guy, Mac Melts. I've been hearing a lot about him, not a ton of information about this guy. Has kind of recently come on the scene. Attach, what is kind of your biggest, kind of featurette, if you will, about this guy, Mac? And he pretty much the biggest thing that he told me was that he's mature. He handles pressure extremely well. And pressure is exactly what is going to start to fall on his shoulders when it comes down to the subliners. And this is someone that New York doesn't need to do well. It's someone that they need to do well, right? It can't just be, oh yeah, you know what? Let's see how this works out. It's like, no, we kind of need this to work. We kind of need this to go over very well. For those that have not looked at the standings, because I realize there's been a lot of things kind of taking your attention. New York, still sitting at the bottom of the league right now. Still in 12th when it comes down to the standings. They're currently 1-6 in series. They're 8-19 in maps. New York has yet to win a series since London. As a matter of fact, it's their only victory that they've had so far throughout the year. New York, they don't really have anywhere else to turn, right? I mean, Happy didn't really work out. That was clearly, from Attach's point of view, he mentioned it. It was pretty much strictly just going to be a fill-in. They don't want to use Sensor. Mac needs to be a must fix for them, because if not, they can start to be more in great danger when it comes down to future playoff hopes. Much like Seattle, people listed New York as a team that would be around the top 5 margin. There's a lot of people who refuse to believe that was ever a thing, and I remember it. I think I have I think I have a few of these Reddit posts and tweets saved in my favorites bar on my computer. I'll have to take a look at those eventually. But I remember people saying, "Hey, New York, top 5, top 6 team." I think I saw a few people talk about Seattle, top 4. There was a few people saying that they were a top 2 team in the world coming into the season. It's the same situation, right? A team that has a lot of expectations on them, but has yet to really see those through. They've been called the friendship team. They've been called a team that can't succeed with the group that they have. Mac has the ability to change that, right? I think Zuma needs somebody to run with. It needs somebody that's going to be fast. New York is looking toward Mac Melts to rejuvenate their lineup and improve the current worst team in the league, right? It'd be different if Mac was coming into a team that, has had some highs, some lows. They've been a team that maybe has lost against the top rosters, but they just need that kick. This team needs a lot, right? This team needs a lot as of right now. And I think Mac, he's a player that's, based on what I've seen, has looked great in online matches, right? He's been great in the gameplay that I've seen, and it's somebody that I hold very, very high hopes for. But considering the pressure that he has to perform, the pressure that is going to exist on his shoulders, and being the sole player that's being brought in to fix the worst team in the league, I think Mac has to be on the list. I think for everyone's list, I think that Mac has to be on the list for a lot of people out there. Like I said, considering the way that this is kind of being phrased, because it is going to be about who are the most impactful players, at least when it comes down to my list, right? The top 5 players that I want to watch are the players that are making the most overall difference when it comes down to their team, the league as a whole. I think Mac Melts is one of those guys. Let's go and move on. The next player that I have on my top 5 players to watch heading into the online league is London's own Jerd. And this may come as a shock to certain people because it isn't a player that's on everyone's radar. And I think the reason for that is because outside of Wiskin, nobody really has been all that stellar for the London Royal Ravens, right? No one's really being talked about other than Wiskin, right? I mean, At least when it comes down to social conversation, when you see people talk about tweets and Reddit and all this different stuff, there's no one who's really getting brought up all that much outside of maybe the new edition and Nasty. But other than that, there's no one really that's kind of flowing with the team right now. It is all about Wuskin. Everybody else is kind of being left on the back burner. And I know I mentioned earlier about the start of the season. Oh, we're talking about New York. We're talking about Seattle. We're also talking about the amazing SMG front line of the London Royal Ravens, right? I think I was someone who mentioned it. Jared and Dylan together, this is going to be insane. This is going to be one scary, aggressive team. But this SMG front line isn't really all that scary, and it isn't really all that aggressive. Speaking solely on Hardpoint, which usually sets up pretty accurate picture when it comes into all respawns. In terms of engagements per minute, London currently sits in 8th out of the 12 teams in the CDL. And what's interesting is that they have the second fastest player in the league in Dylan. And out of players that have played more than 2 events, Dylan is regarded as the fastest player. In terms of SMG front lines, so I'm on Hardpoint here, engagements per minute. When you look at other teams that had those 2 defined kind of SMG frontline players, they're kind of playing alongside each other. I want to talk about the difference in terms of their speed. So pretty much the bigger the number, the bigger the speed difference between the players, which may not be a horrible thing, but in terms of you're going to kind of get a little bit of an idea when it comes down to this. Like I said, SMG front lines, looking at different teams in comparison to London, where do they stack up against other rosters that are pretty well defined in this department? Minnesota, 0.24 difference. Chicago, 0.22 difference. Atlanta, 0.11. OGLA, 0.09. London, a 1.03 difference. That is how much slower Jared is playing in comparison to Dylan. The reason as for why I'm interested to watch Jared isn't necessarily for him specifically, because he hasn't been great, and I think he deserves to be on the chopping block, but for how rather London handles this problem. Now, from what I've been told, Nasty is currently unavailable. The CDL apparently approved him when it comes down to visas and stuff like that. However, there have been a few issues, maybe when it comes down to the government. Don't know all the details behind it, but just take what I'm saying somewhat roughly but accurately. The CDL has approved it. However, for whatever reason, visa complications are still taking place. It's hard to take beatings, especially when this thing called COVID-19 is taking place. So he is currently unavailable until further notice. I'm saying it's going to take, or what I've been told, it's going to take somewhat of an act of God in order for this to be resolved here relatively soon. Take that however you will. Pretty reliable source. But the thing to keep in mind about London is that Rated really wasn't playing all that bad. And that's the thing for me. I have been someone who has been to the rescue of the flexes, right? There have been so many guys who have been kind of taken out of a team because of their pace. And it's because they're out of position. That's the biggest thing. Rated out of position when it comes down to this team. He was playing, by the way, keep this in mind. He was playing not much slower than Jared is right now. Jared, I think, depending on how he is utilized, will be the key for London and for them to see success. They aren't a bad team, right? Let's keep this in mind. London is not a bad team by any means, right? They have looked great at certain moments, but they haven't been amazing, right? They haven't been a team that's just like, oh, wow, look at this London group. Look at how consistent that they are, because they haven't been bad, but they also haven't been amazing. Like I said, they're pretty much in the dead center when it comes down to every game mode, right? They're 8-6 in Hardpoint. They're 6-5 in Search and Destroy. They're 3-5 in Domination. Right? They're 17-16 overall. They need someone, and I'm not saying that the guy is Jared necessarily, but I think he has the ability to open up doors to better help guys like Scraps and guys like Dylan, right? Scraps has looked great for years. Dylan looked unbelievable last season. The odds that these two guys are both having an off year and everything but Search and Destroy is odd. And it doesn't make sense. And it shouldn't continue. It should not continue. And I don't think that this makes sense to London management either. My eye is on Jared. I think he needs to be better. I think he needs to play faster. London needs to find a proper way to utilize him. because the young gun of Nasty isn't on the radar of returning anytime soon. And if they can't figure out a way to plug this guy in terms of Jerd, they can keep bringing in players, right? They can bring in Rady, they can bring in Shawnee. None of them are going to work perfectly unless you get Jerd on the right track, or at least if you're able to get the Slayers back on track, which I think is going to take a player adjustment. Like I said, there's a major difference when it comes down to the SNGs of London. I think they're suffering minor in terms of other teams' issues, but they're suffering the same problems a lot of other teams are when it comes down to certain spots. All right, let's look ahead now to the next player to watch. That now being Pharaoh from the Florida Mutineers. Let's be real here, right? Florida is an interesting territory right now. They currently sit dead center in the standings at 6th place, meaning that they have the ability to either go up or go down. And as far as I'm concerned, depending on where Pristini is at, do I see him possibly subbing in for Mox in the future? I think it's a very real potential, except there is still not a whole lot of word being spread around Pristini right now. What's kind of going on with him? I think that Florida wants to try to use Mox for as long as possible, but like I said, it's only a matter of time. We'll see what kind of takes place, but I think that potential is there. How realistic is it? I think it's kind of day to day at the moment in terms of whether or not you think it's going higher or lower. But I'm looking out for Pharaoh because I think that he has the best chance, alongside Skies, of course, to lead this team in slang, and specifically in terms of morale. I think this team needs a motivator, and they need someone to be consistent, right? That's what they need out of Pharaoh right now. You see the hype that Florida Mutineers are putting on Pharaoh right now, saying, hey, F3, F3, hashtag F3, F3. He's coming in. Look out for this guy, Pharaoh. Be aware of this guy. And there's a good reason for that, right? They need somebody to come in and make a difference in the comms, somebody to help take over games, because we know that Pharaoh has that potential, right? There's a reason why he was a hot commodity by a lot of teams before he was added to the Mutineers. We heard the rumors of OGLA, their interest in someone like Pharaoh. He was the instant replacement, possibly, for someone like Dashy or someone like TJ or JCap, whoever would have been on the chopping block. He was the guy that they were looking at. He is the guy that a lot of teams were looking at, and for good reason. He's been labeled by many, many analysts, many pro players, as the best player not in the CDL. I think he can mesh very well with guys like Frosty and Havoc in the SMG frontline, but I think he has to lead them in those moments. They need the spark, if that makes sense. And I think that he has the ability to be that spark. This team has been labeled as a roster with a lot of inconsistent pieces, which really hasn't been inaccurate. And none of their SMGs have had really an all-around excellent year so far, right? It hasn't been a super complete year by any of the SMGs on this group. And this is also a team, by the way, that's struggling in Search and Destroy. Right? You look at these guys on paper, you think Search and Destroy would probably be one of their better game modes. But this is a team that I think shouldn't be necessarily relying on respawns. I think this should be a team that's kind of relying on their Search and Destroy. And I think someone that can help them with that is somebody like Pharaoh. Frosty hasn't been on par with where we thought he would kind of be. I mean, he's been good, but he hasn't been at that next level that we really thought he would kind of progress to, at least as of yet, or where we thought he'd be. Skies has looked excellent. This is a young team that I think needs more direction. I'm not sure if Pharaoh can provide that, but with the fire and the passion that he showed in LA, I know the capability is there for him to lead not just an in-game, but also out of game as well. We'll get ready to get GODRX on the line in just a moment. Next player to look out for heading into the online league, at least for me, is Illy from the Dallas Empire. Now, I know this is going to be kind of a common answer by a lot of people out there, and it is for good reason, right? I mean, it definitely is. It is for good reason. And the reason why I'm choosing Illy over Shotzi here is that Shotzi now kind of finds himself in a better position, right? I think the role change works, right? From all accounts, it was a good one. We see a major improvement statistically, mentally. It seemed as if in the interviews for him, now that he isn't playing really around the OBJ nearly as much, I think we all know where Shotzi is going to be at for the long haul. A solid player whose job is to roam and to slay. My big question is now on Illy. Right? Despite not having the breakout start of the year that many people thought that he would have had, as many people want to probably try and poke fun about being back online, I think realistically, this could be kind of a catch your breath type moment, right? And for those who haven't watched the Dallas Empire documentaries, right, or the docu series that they've been doing, they really kind of had a rough go of it. I mean, the scene, myself included, everyone was talking about the new guys in Illy and Shotzi, right? How are they going to perform on land? Whenever they go to launch weekend, a lot of pressure on their shoulders. They're playing the best two teams. Then they go to London. They're getting yelled at by the crowd. There's just a lot of noise going on right there. And I think that this online ability could be a perfect refresh button, if you will, for someone like Illy. And if Illy can look as electric as he's been in tens and online matches, that mixed in with this team will bring them to another level, right? It will move them another tier up, I think, if you will. And I know I've gone on the record saying I don't believe that Dallas really have pressure coming into the online league because by definition, they're the most consistent LAN team so far. And because they've won a championship, like I said, it's not as if they really have anything to prove at this point, other than the fact that they want to be, or rather that they can be, a top two team. And I think if they want to prove that, Illy is their guy to bring them to that level. I think Illy will be the guy that has the ability to help extend them to be that extra piece, to be that extra layer. That was the big thing that I talked about with United last year before they went on to win the World Championship. It was the layers that roster had. And the reason why I bring up United in terms of layers was because when they added someone like Abizi, when they added someone like Simp to the team, which we all know are fantastic players, right? There's no question about that. But when they added those guys to the team, it was as if, hey, we've got this guy. And then, oh, yeah, you peel back the layers, we've got this guy. Peel back the layers. Oh, yeah, we've got this guy. Right? We had Simp. We had Beasley. We had Arcides. Right? There was Clayster. Then there was Pristini. I mean, there were so many different players. And on this Dallas team, right, it's kind of the same aspect. You got Shotzi. Oh, yeah, here's Clayster. Oh, yeah, here's Krim. Here's Hook, by the way. Oh, yeah, here's Illy. Like, if we start to see the young guys, especially Illy in this moment, start to turn up, this Dallas team, I think, raises up even more. But I do have a spotlight on Illy because he looks so strong online, and I think that he can be another piece for the Empire to really look back on and really see the benefit from. All right, last player. When it comes down to the top 5 players to watch heading into the online league, is Zed from the Paris Legion. Now, I know my list hasn't been exactly what a lot of people probably would have assumed it would have been. It's not your highlight players. It's not the Celiums. It's not the Simps of the world. But this is the same reason. I think that Zed has the capability to change the face of the Paris Legion. I think he has the ability to change the way that this team currently works. Now, there are, for certain solid reasons, that I didn't choose certain players because we don't know what's happening with OGLA, right? There are certain reasons why I didn't choose specific players, and there's a specific reason why I didn't choose certain guys because, like I said, we don't know what's happening with OGLA. And I think based on the online record that Atlanta had coming into the season, it showcases that there's not one spotlight on a particular player for FaZe, right? I mean, and specifically, right? We know what we're going to see from Atlanta. I feel like there's no real surprise that we're going to get from a roster like that. And we don't know what's happening with OGLA, so there's no real way to speculate. Hey, this is the guy to look out for. And, oh, okay, Dashy, is he in the team? No, there's no way to really know that. The reason why I chose Zed is because Paris are having, I believe, some in-game problems. From what I can see, it really seems to me like a pace problem. More than any other team, do you see as fast of a player as Kismet is with such a slow amount of other 4 teammates? To put in perspective a little bit, Paris is by far the slowest team currently in the CDL. Talking on hardpoint, engagements per minute. I know I like to bring up that stat a lot, but it's important. Talking on hardpoint, Kismet averages around 5.40 engagements per minute. The rest of his team averages around 4.59 individually, meaning that each teammate on average is around an engagement less per minute than Kismet. And I realize to an outside perspective, it doesn't sound like a lot. It doesn't sound like a really big increase. The typical average of a player right now in the CDL, the typical amount of engagements per minute in the CDL is around a 5. Kismet is plus 0.40. So he is plus 0.40 above the average. The rest of the team is around minus 4-0. There is a major disconnect when it comes down to the SMG front line that needs to be adjusted. And based on how great, at times rather, Kisman has been, I don't look at him. Instead, I look at someone like Zed, who is playing a lot slower than a lot of other SMG frontline type players. He and Shocks, I think, are going to need to pick up the pace to be a lethal team for the future. Right? Zed is currently kind of in the range of a main AR and even flex players that are starting to be dropped right now. Or there are some flex players that are playing at the same speed as Zed, and they're being dropped for how slow they're playing. It's starting to get a little bit scary. It really is. It's starting to get a little bit nerve wracking for someone like Zed. Paris is a team that I have ranked as someone, or rather, I'll say this. Paris is a team that I have ranked as having some of the most pressure on them, right? I mentioned it was Paris and Seattle for me, the teams that have the most pressure coming into the online league. Granted, do I see someone like Zed being replaced? No, I don't. Based on the way that management works, based on the way that I've heard the team is kind of working right now, their plan of attack, I don't think they bring anybody in unless there's a major problem. And it's going to take a decent amount of major problems for them to really start to kind of see some struggles. But we've seen glimpses, right? And this team, as other rosters begin to rise, need to plant their foot down. Because if they don't start to, they're going to start to kind of fall a little bit. They're going to start to kind of fall to that kind of top 8 point of view, and they want to be on the higher end rather than the lower end of some of these results moving forward. I think that if Zed can start to speed up, if he can be a consistent piece for them, because we know how great at times that Zed can be, this could be a very scary roster for the future. We're going to bring on GODRX here as soon as he's good to go. But like I said, in closing thoughts, when it comes to the top 5 players, feel free to let me know your guys' thoughts. Feel free to let me know what your opinions are when it comes down to the online league. Who are your favorite players coming into the online matches? Any players in specific? I see LandO in the chat, by the way. Shout out, similar name. Abizi, Simp, Prestini, Arcides, Clayster. I think I'm noticing a little bit of a trend there. Not too sure. But yeah, like I said, I know from my list, it's a little bit interesting for some people. But yeah, I'm pretty interested in that. I'm excited to see exactly how everything starts to translate. But I think we're going to go ahead and get GODRX on the line. So apologies. I think we're going to have to exit a few things. So give us just a moment as we get GODRX here ready to go. To hear it without further ado, we welcome on player for the Minnesota RØKKR, my current front runner for MVP. It is GODRX. Adam, I mentioned to you at the start of the year when you first joined the RØKKR, I asked, can you keep up that same level of play from Black Ops 4? You told me you can do it, and you've absolutely lived up to that. Where does this level of play come from in the last year?
I don't even know. Just, I mean, confidence, I guess. Just having that, having those breakout teams, have my recognition, just go out there, my name getting out there left and right. I guess finally just, I mean, like I said, just the confidence, man. Having everyone just say like, "This guy's the best." It just keeps on motivating me more and more to just keep on improving.
Well, I know that in a few interviews, right, you've been asked, how does it feel to kind of have the admiration a little bit? And I want to allow for the audience to understand that one as well. How does it feel to kind of finally get the admiration that you've been waiting for such a long time?
It does. I mean, having that feels really good to me. Like I said in past interviews, I've always been on those like borderline teams of being in the pro league, but like
Sure.
there's always like giving that or like failing that one shot, like the one opportunity thing. But just having that, like I said, just like a few minutes ago, like just hearing that over and over again just motivates you even more and more to just keep on improving and being better. I know some players like that, they always like get that and they just kind of slack a bit, but that's not the case with me. Just having that just motivates me.
Now, what do you think has kind of led to the RØKKR being such a talked about team this season, right? Because I think not just from a playing standpoint, but also from kind of a general point of view, it just seems as if whenever we talk about the CDL, right, the first thought that comes to a lot of people's mind is, oh yeah, the Chicago Hunts, Atlanta FaZe, Dallas Empire, Optic, even. But I feel like Minnesota RØKKR have kind of entered into that conversation. How do you think that's come about exactly?
I mean, I knew from the beginning we're gonna be a good team, even though the our group of players no one expected a team with at all, right? But we have Assault and Silly, two world champs from 2 years ago, World War II. I mean, that's a no brainer. Like, and we have the three young guns, me, Asim, and Alex, who all have the strive and the motivation to win and keep on improving. And I think just our team chemistry and how we improve every event every day as a team is what brings us into that conversation as like the one of the top talk teams right now.
Absolutely. Now, okay, I'll go and transfer to this. I managed to actually see your tweet a little bit earlier about OGLA and scrims. Are you experiencing the same issue that Clayster mentioned a few days ago about teams maybe not showing up for scrims on time?
Yeah, we definitely are, but it's definitely an everyday thing because scrims are
Sure,
scheduled for 2 and 4:30 Eastern. I mean, like 2 p.m. I'm expected everyone to be in the lobby ready to go, not 2:20 after.
sure.
So when Cap gave me that response like 2:01, kind of a weird tweet, I'm like, yeah, it's a minute after, but I'm expecting, like I said, everyone to be in the lobby and ready to go and be on time. It's
You
just
think?
it's just very annoying.
Sure. I understandably so. I'll say this: do you think that kind of same mentality is kind of apparent when it comes to the online league? Because there's a lot of people who've kind of talked about, oh, the mentality when it comes to the online league, and whether or not people think it's kind of a severe issue. I actually talked to Rambo about it because I think it's personally going to be a big factor for a lot of rosters. Where do you kind of sit on the online aspect of the CDL, how it affects players' mentality, things like that?
um, I mean, everything's switching to online league. I can see it definitely, like, I guess, killing him, like, the motivation a tad bit because everyone's always excited to go to the event, play in front of
Sure.
that crowd, have that atmosphere. But at the same time, you have to realize it's still the entire CDL league. It's still the first franchise league. And yeah, with everything going on in the world right now, it's very unfortunate. But like, you have to just keep on motivating yourself. And I feel like with the new online system, you definitely have to create a regimen of waking up at a certain time, getting on early, and preparing and warming up every single day. Because it's the same thing as just actually playing matches still, but it's just online now.
Who's looked good in scrims recently?
Look in scrims, I'd have to say Dallas and FaZe as per usual. They always been the top teams in scrims so far, and they haven't let up.
Any particular players that are kind of maybe surprising? Any players that are being kind of consistent when it comes to online at all?
From Dallas, I mean Dallas, I would say all five of them. No disrespect to them at all. I'm just saying all five they've been
Sure.
doing good so far. But FaZe, I would say Simp and Abizi is always the Tiny Terror duo. I mean they're always just kicking ass, but there's many of those players so far.
Now, I'm not sure where you kind of rank yourself in the MVP conversation, but other players in terms of them, where do you think that they deserve to be alongside yourself? When we're talking about maybe like a top five, top, I mean, however you want to kind of rank it, what other players do you think kind of deserve to be in that conversation alongside yourself for MVP?
For like top five, including myself right now.
Sure. Well, yeah,
Let's do top five. I have to say Wuskin so far this season. He's been playing lights out every event. Definitely Octane. Even though haven't had the best year so far, he's always been up to par with every time he plays. He's always doing good around the map. Um, trying to think here as well. Oh man. Um, this is a tough one. I'm being biased here, but I have to say Alex as well. Even
it's
though
not a
he's on
bad
my team,
pick. Not
obviously.
a bad
Yeah.
pick by any means.
Even he's on my team, he's been playing amazing so far this entire season. I think me and him at the past LA event had our pretty lights out event so far. But the last player I would say uh I have to say probably Clayster too. He's been doing good so far this entire season. Always, like I said with Octane, always up to par and just keeping consistent. But it's like my top five so far.
Okay, I noticed a few. I know people are going to mention this. There's a lot of ARs in that conversation, but
Yeah,
it is an AR game. That's for sure. I think there's
it
no real
definitely
doubts
is.
about that.
Especially with how this game plays out on land, the M4 is definitely the go-to gun in a lot of scenarios.
That's for sure. No question about it. But the community obviously learned just what a day or so ago about the CDL's announcement for the online league format, scheduling, etc. What did you make of the announcement?
Um, when they announce it, given the circumstances, I understand, but it's never a good thing to switch to an online league because some players and teams like to have the online, I guess, safety net, I would say.
Sure.
But it definitely sucks because, like I said, everyone loves playing in that atmosphere at events, seeing the crowd, and just seeing their supporters, meeting everyone, having management there. I mean, it's definitely gonna be different, but we all just have to just get used to it. And only for me personally, it's my first time playing in the online leagues. I remember they used to have that back in Black Ops 3 and such.
Yep.
But I mean, I'm just still excited to play.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes down to a few of the announcements, right, that were made, there was a few talks about, oh, how is the format going to exactly kind of transfer over? In your eyes, were you kind of expecting what the announcement was in terms of the tournament format? Pretty much just kind of getting copy and pasted over from LAN to online. Did you kind of expect maybe for there to be 12 teams, just kind of in the when it came down to your mindset, things like that, were there any things that kind of slipped the net that you thought, hey, maybe there should be 12 teams, maybe there should be double elimination, a format change, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I definitely I mean, I didn't like or they didn't have it, but I definitely would like to see was have all 12 teams play at the events now, considering
Yeah.
we're not traveling. But nothing really was like stood out to me. I mean, it was pretty obvious they're gonna still use the same format, which I like personally, but the same format just really can't wait to play.
Yeah. Have you and the team got a chance to test out the dedicated servers yet?
We have actually, and they're pretty nice if I do say so myself.
Does it feel in comparison to land, where are we ranking it right now?
um, I mean, it's like I would say it's pretty close to it, but nothing's really gonna ever feel like
Sure. No,
land.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's definitely up there with it.
That's good, right? 'Cause I think what is it 60 hertz in comparison to the old 12? I don't even know
I
myself. I've heard 60.
I don't even know either, and I play the game every day, so
We'll just go off of that. We'll just say it's solid from GODRX's point of view.
yeah.
Is there anything that you and the team are looking to do and trying to in some ways overcome when it comes down to the mindset thing that we talked about a little bit earlier? There's a lot of teams, a lot of players that are kind of talking about it. Is there anything that the Rocker specifically are going to try to do to be aware of the new kind of online league thought process?
Yeah, definitely. Well, prior to like every or like prior to when we actually had to travel to events and all that stuff, there'd be like certain days where you're just not really feeling scrims and you kind of just joke around a tad bit and have fun. Even though that you can still have that, but we're just taking every single day now as serious as it gets because we know that everything's on the line right now and everything like every match is gonna matter left and right. When because online COD, like I said, some teams definitely have that little safety net, quote unquote, but we just gotta take every practice serious as it gets.
Are you guys going to be playing at the Rocker HQ for some of these games?
Yes, I'm pretty sure we were playing for all of them at the RØKKR facility, but not for this first event because with everything going on right now, three of us are at home, including myself. So I'm back in Maryland.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, but we're all a little bit spread out, but it's not too bad for scrims and our connection and all that stuff. But like I said, I've been at home in Maryland, and with everything's going on, I'm kind of waiting for everything to die down a tad bit with
Sure,
the
absolutely.
virus, and then come back once everything's a little safer.
Now, from what you know, are there a lot of teams that are kind of following along with that, where players kind of headed back home? We've heard a few things with things like OGLA and Dashy going back to Canada, which who knows what's going on in that situation. But regardless, a few players are kind of being spread out. Have there been any other teams that you've heard that are kind of doing the same thing as you guys?
Yeah, I've heard I can't name the players off the top of my head, but I know, I mean, a few of them went home. I know Temp went back to Atlanta, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, a few players have come back home to their families and all that stuff during this time, which I completely understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, your team has been brought up in the conversation a lot in terms of, the switch to the online league. A lot of people talking about it. How are they going to kind of translate things like that? Why do you think that your team's been brought up so much when it comes down to online conversation? It feels like you guys in Dallas are kind of like the two major teams that everybody's addressing. Why do you think that is?
Um, well, for me personally, I would hope the address is that we're not gonna be much better online because, in my opinion, our team is way better compared to or way better on LAN compared to online. I know Alex every day just gets pissed off about it, which it's kind of funny at some points. But I mean, I guess they're talking about us because, like I said, I want to say that they're all saying we're better on LAN because I know we're not the
Sure.
best online team, but we still get our practice in, and we still got get our reps in, I would say.
Do you think we'll see kind of a major shift in the standings now heading into the to an online league format?
I wouldn't say a major shift, but there'll be some teams that I would say will benefit from it, but nothing too major.
Are there any teams that you can say specifically? Is that allowed right now? Should we hold off?
Let's hold off on that
Okay,
one.
we'll hold that off for right now. But
Yeah.
we obviously leave the online league conversation to translate it into LAN, right? And when we leave the tournament LAN league, we leave it in LA with the RØKKR and the Dallas Empire in the finals. What was it like, right? What was it like being in your first ever grand final? I know it's kind of a negative at the end of the things, but overall, what was it
Yeah.
like being in that environment?
I mean, first grand finals. I mean, when we beat FaZe, and I remember Justin told me backstage, he was like, "First grand finals, huh?" And like in my mind, it just felt like just another series for me.
Yeah.
I knew we were in grand finals, but like I said, it was another series. We just three maps and we win the whole thing. But I mean, it didn't go that way. But if we did come back in that fashion, reverse sweep, there would have been a lot of trash talking. But nonetheless, it was a fun ass series to be a part of.
Last question. What has the rocker managed to figure out that every team hasn't about the Atlanta phase, right? Why are the rocker always the team giving them problems?
I think, I mean, any other team would say this, but I think I mean, we've proved it in LA, but I feel like we like just match up like perfect with their players and their play styles. Like me versus Celium on the map is always a good matchup. Major Maniac and Assault on the map. You have Asim and Alex against Simp and Abizi, but that and we always study up on teams we play. It's simple as that. I remember Maven talking about it on one of their episodes. I can't remember the name of it, the episodes are
Mhm.
called, but they said we treat it like it's like you go into a football match. You study the team you play, and that's exactly what we do. We just study up on on a team, and I think it always shows against them.
Who do you think are some of the best teams that prepare in terms of CDL teams? Are there any other rosters that you think are kind of up there with you guys in terms of preparation for matches?
I would definitely say FaZe as well. I mean, they're always the top team. Them, Dallas, and Chicago. I would say like basically the top four teams, including us. I mean, there's a reason we're all top four, and we just study up and actually prepare.
Love to
Not
hear
saying
it.
other teams do, but it's just the way we execute it, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, that's GODRX player for the Minnesota Rocker. Adam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Lynn. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, buddy. All right. Well, thank you so much for everybody for tuning in for today. I want to give a massive thank you to everybody who managed to tune in for the broadcast. I know we had like I said, a few issues kind of in terms of translating from the conversations, but we do appreciate everybody for sticking with us. We're still getting everything kind of ironed out when it comes down to different aspects about the show. But we really, really do appreciate everybody for tuning in. Like I said, we had some great conversation today. We talked about the CDL being back, how everything kind of works, and how it now functions for the future. We also managed to go over our top 5 players to watch when it comes down to the online league, and also had a great chat along with good old GODRX. I tell you what, it's always great talking to Adam. Great guy. I'm excited to see exactly how he translates along with the rocker into the online league. Again, thank you to all of our listeners on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, etc., as well as all of you for watching us live. Now, if you didn't get a chance to, we also did have a recent schedule change. For the first time, the rather off the break will be on Thursday and will be on Thursday for the future. So keep in mind, off the break, no longer on Tuesdays and Fridays. It is now going to be on Tuesdays and Thursdays. However, the time does remain exactly the same. That's 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, directly following Contested. By the way, make sure to follow their show as well. Lots of awesome Overwatch coverage. But like I said, we follow directly after them. Just want to kind of keep that in mind for audio listeners in case you try to tune in on Friday. You just missed us. We were just a day early. So Tuesdays and Thursdays will be live this Thursday as well, hyping up and being very, very excited for what should be an interesting and great return to the CDL with the Dallas online homestand. It should be a great time. Look to have some excellent coverage when it comes down to it. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Enjoy your week, and we'll see you on Thursday.